Hello everyone, this is Stephen Balch, your instructor for computer applications online at Ozarka College. In this video, I'm going to take you through the first few pages of Excel Module 2 in your textbook. So if you haven't already done so, go ahead and turn to page EX2-1 in your textbook. And in this module, we're going to kind of expand on what we learned in Module 1 and learn a little bit more about formulas and additional functions and some additional formatting in this particular module. So, if you look on page EX2-2, that's what our finished worksheet should look like. So when we're done with this, going through the module, going through the steps, you'll want to make sure that you check your worksheet against the example there on page 2-2 in your textbook, alright, before you actually submit it online. And so let's go ahead and get started. What we're going to do is click the Start button and click the Excel tile to go to Excel. And then we're going to click the blank workbook thumbnail and maximize our Excel window. And I'm going to zoom in on my worksheet just a little bit so that I can see it better and you're able to see it better as well. Alright, so in this module, the steps start on page EX2-4. So we've already opened up a blank workbook in Excel. So our next step is to start typing in the titles, the main title, the subtitle, all the column titles, and so forth. And so we're going to start doing that. Make sure that cell A1 is the active cell in the worksheet. And we're going to type in what's shown there on step 2 on the bottom of page EX2-4. So we're going to type in clay pour engineering as the main worksheet title. And then you can either press the down arrow key or the enter key to move down to cell A2. And then you're going to type in the subtitle, which is salary report. Okay. And then on page 2-5, it wants us to move to cell A3. So you can either use the enter key or the down arrow key, or you can just click on cell A3, however you want to do it. And in cell A3, we're going to type in employee. And then we're going to either press the right arrow key or the tab key to move to cell B3, and you're going to type in email address in cell B3. Then you're going to move to cell C3 and type in dependents. And then in D3, you're going to type in the word hours. And then you're going to press Alt-Enter. Okay? Alt-Enter is what we use when we want to insert multiple lines in the same cell. And the reason that we're doing that in this cell is to save some horizontal space in our worksheet. When you have a long column title, you can break it down into multiple lines so that you can save some horizontal space in your worksheet. And you do that by pressing Alt-Enter to create another line in your worksheet. Alright, so after you type in the word hours into cell D3, you press Alt-Enter, and then you type in the second word in that title, which is the word worked. Okay? So it should read hours on the top row, or the top line of the cell, and then worked on the second line. Alright, once you get that typed in, you're going to press Tab to move to cell E3. In cell E3, you're going to type in the word hourly, and then you're going to press Alt-Enter to create a second line in that cell, and then you're going to type in pay rate, just like it shows on step 5 on page 2-5. Alright, then step 6, it wants us to move to cell F3. So we're going to move to cell F3 and type in gross pay. And then we're going to move to cell G3 and type in federal tax. And then in H3, we're going to type in state tax. And then in I3, we're going to type in tax percentage. And then in J3, we're going to type in net pay. And then in K3, we're going to type in hire date. Okay? And then once you get that done, just move to another cell to complete that entry. Alright. Once we've got all that done, our next step is to start entering each employee's information under those headings. So we're going to click on cell A4, and on the bottom of page 2-5 under to enter salary data. And by the way, basically, if you'll notice, what we're doing in this particular on this particular worksheet is we're creating a salary report. Okay, and this is a typical worksheet that you would see completed in a business, and basically a way that a business can keep track of its payroll and salary information for its employees. Alright, so in cell A4 we're going to type in the first employee name, which is Altor, Benny, and you're just going to type it exactly the way it shows it there. Alright, then you're going to move to cell C4. We're going to skip email address for right now. We're going to type that in later. So we won't have anything, as we're typing in each employee's information, we're going to skip the email address column for now. We're going to insert that later. So we're going to move to the dependents column for that first employee, which would be cell C4. And we're going to type in the number of dependents, which is 3. And then we're going to move to cell D4 and type in 74.50 for that hours worked for that employee. And then on page 2-6 it gives you the rest of the information for that first employee. So just type it in there, and then you're going to skip gross pay, federal tax, state tax, tax percentage, and net pay. We're not going to type anything into those columns. Those are going to be formulas that we're going to insert later. So we need to move all the way over to cell K4. And we're going to type in the date of the hiring for that employee, which is 9/5/10. Type it exactly the way it shows it on the top of page 2-6 in your book, step 5. Okay? Alright, once we get the information for the first employee typed in, then you need to look on table 2-1 on page 2-6 in your book and enter the remaining employee data. Okay, so we've got the first one inserted, and now we need to go down to cell A5 and enter the next one. Okay, so you're just going to go through and remember to skip the email address column, and hours worked is 80. Just make sure you type the numbers exactly the way they're shown. Make sure you skip over those columns F through J. Move all the way to K when you're entering the hire date. Just like I'm doing. Alright, and then the next employee is Hanfield Germain. Now, in your book, in that table 2-1, it shows that employee's name on 2 lines. That is just like that in the book, just to save some space in the book. You're not actually going to type that on multiple lines. You're going to type that employee's name on just one line in your worksheet. And you'll notice if you look at the picture on page 2-7, it shows, all of the each employee's name on one line. So you're not going to enter any of the employee names on multiple lines. So just kind of keep that in mind. We'll actually adjust the column width of column A later to make sure that all of the employee names are visible. Okay? So then we're going to move to dependents for that employee, which is 0, and then hours worked. And as you're typing these numbers, take your time. Make sure you're typing them correctly, because these numbers are going to be used to make the calculations later on, like gross pay and federal tax and so forth. And if your numbers that you're using in your formulas are not correct, then your calculated values are not going to be correct. So take your time. This is one of the critical parts of creating the worksheet. I know it's kind of takes some time to enter all this data, but it's important to get it right because, like I said, it's going to determine the accuracy of your calculated values later on. Alright, so just keep going and type in the remaining data for the worksheet here. Okay. And like I said, make sure you skip over those columns that it shows there. Alright. And then we're going to go to the next one, which is in cell A8. That one is NACHT, comma, Savannah. Her number of dependents, 1. Hours worked, 42.25. 5.90. Remember, you can use tab to move from one column to the next. You can also use the right arrow key. Alright, just again, make sure you're taking your time and getting it correct. And the next employee is Pitfield. Joel. And then move to C9. And his number of dependents is 0. Hours worked is 75.75. Hourly rate 21.95. And then he was hired on 5/24/13. Then you're going to move down to the next one, which is in cell A10. And this one is Spalding, comma, Jill. And then skip a column to move to cell C10. And number of dependents is 3. Hours worked is 80. Hourly pay rate $32.50. And then you're going to move over to the hire date column. Type in the hire date for that employee, which is 11/11/11. Then you're going to move down to cell A11 and type that one in. And number of dependents for that employee is 2. Hours worked 64.50. And hourly pay rate is 41.02. Now, you might notice that when you have zeros as the decimal places in the hours worked and hourly pay rate numbers, that Excel will automatically kind of remove those zeros. And that's just something that it will do until the number's still there. It's just that last zero or last couple of zeros won't show right now. Later on, when we format the worksheet, when we format the numbers in the worksheet, those zeros will show. But right now, don't worry about it. It'll just basically show the number without the zeros in the decimal place. We'll fix that later on. Okay? Alright. And then we'll go down to the hire date for that employee, which is 4/29/06. And then we've got one more here. Wilson Olga. And dependents is 1. Hours worked is 68. Hourly pay rate is 29.43. And then we're going to move over to the hire date. That's 9/22/17. Alright. So we've got all of our numbers entered. Make sure that you complete that last entry by moving to another cell. Alright. And this would be a good time to kind of stop and check all of your numbers. Okay, I'm going to do that as well. Just kind of go line by line, or row by row, and just kind of check all of your numbers, because they are critical to you getting the correct calculated values later on. Okay, so just go line by line, make sure, be careful, because sometimes it's hard to see if a number has been, two numbers have been transposed. That's one of the common things that mistakes that you make, and so just double check everything. Alright, the more time you spend checking now, the less time you'll have to try to figure out where your errors are later on. Okay? Alright, so at this point we've checked our worksheet. Everything looks good. So what we're going to do next is, on the bottom of page 2-6, it talks about the flash fill feature in Excel, which basically is a way that you can, if you have a sequence of, for example, in our case, we're going to have a sequence of email addresses that all have the same domain name. In other words, the last part of the email address. And so anytime you have a situation like that where you have a sequence of data that you need to type into Excel, you can use the flash fill feature to kind of have Excel automatically fill in the rest of the data for you. So what we're going to do is click on cell B4. Remember, that was the cell that we skipped over earlier because we knew that we were going to use the flash fill to insert these email addresses. So you're going to type in the email address for that first employee, which is shown there on step 1 on page 2-7. Make sure you're very accurate as you type this in. If you misspell something in the email address, especially the domain name, it will not autofill correctly for us. Okay, so you have to be careful at this stage and make sure you're typing it exactly correctly. All right, so double check it, triple check it, make sure it's correct. All right, then you're gonna, once you get that one done, you're gonna click on cell B5 and type in the next email address for that second employee. All right, which is lfox@example.com. You'll notice the last part of the email address, which is called the domain name, is the same for both employees. Okay? All right. And so at this point, what we want to do is click the enter button up on the formula bar to finalize that change that we made to cell B5. All right. Once we've done that, on step 2 on the bottom of page 2-7, we're going to click on Data, the Data tab up on the ribbon, okay? And then we're going to find the Flash Fill button, which is over in the Data Tools group, okay? Right over here in the Data Tools group. We're going to click on Flash Fill, and what it will do is it will fill in the email addresses for the remaining employees. Okay, basically what Excel does on the flash fill for the email address is we type those first two in, and of course the last part of the email address was the same for both employees, because most of the time employees will have a company email address that they use, and so basically it was the first initial and the last name for each employee that made up the first part of their email address. And so when we type the first two and then click flash fill, Excel just basically figured out what we needed to do for the rest of the employees, how the email address would be set up for the rest of the employees there in the worksheet, and then basically inserted those correctly in cells B6 through B12. Okay? Now, one thing that it does, though, one thing you'll notice it did, in addition to inserting the email addresses in the correct place in the under the email address heading is it also thought that we needed email addresses in cells B1 and B2. And we don't actually want those. And so what we're going to do is we're going to drag through those two cells, just drag through cells B1 and B2, and then press the delete key on your keyboard, okay, to delete those email addresses in cells B1 and B2 because we don't need those, okay? All right, so we've got that. Now, page 2-8, we want to click on cell A13 down here and type in totals because we're going to be getting totals for some of these columns in our worksheet. And then we're going to go down to cell A14. And again, you can use the enter key to move down or the down arrow key. We're going to type in the word highest because we're going to get the maximum value in some of the ranges of our worksheet. Then we're going to go down to cell A15 and type in lowest because we're also going to get the minimum value in some of our ranges of our worksheet. And then you're going to go down to cell A16 and type in average. We're also going to get the average values for some of the ranges in our worksheet. Okay? Once you do that, just make sure you finalize that entry in cell A16 by either moving to another cell or clicking the enter box up on the enter button up on the formula bar. All right? And then on the bottom of page 2-8, it wants us to change the sheet tab name. And so we learned how to do that in Module 1. So you're just going to double click where it says Sheet 1 down here on the tab sheet. And then it'll go into edit mode. It'll move the insertion point into the tab. And then you're going to type in Salary Report as the name of the tab or the name of the worksheet. Okay? And then you're going to press enter to finalize that. And then it wants us to change the tab color as well for that tab. And we also learned how to do that in Module 1. So you're going to right click on the tab, point to tab color. It opens up the tab colors gallery. And then what we want to do is find blue accent 1, which is on the first row under theme colors. And it is on the 5th column. It's this one right here. Blue accent 1. So we're going to click on that and it changes that tab color to that color that we chose. And then our next step here is we need to save the workbook. Okay, so we're going to go up here to the save button up on the quick access toolbar. That brings us to backstage view in Excel. We're going to click on browse and we're going to, in the file name box, we're going to type in what's shown there as the file name. So just type that in exactly the way it's shown. And then you're going to need to navigate in the upper pane of the Save As dialog box, just like we've learned all semester. You're going to have to choose where you want to save it. Alright, in my case, I've got a folder for this class that I'm saving my work in. And I've got a folder called Excel that I'm saving in. If you're doing this at home, you'll just find, basically you'll save this file just in a similar location to what you used to save the previous files for this class. It really doesn't matter too much where you save it, just it matters that you're able to find it when you get ready to upload it, or you get ready to work on it some more if you don't get it all done at one time. Alright, so just put it somewhere, save it somewhere where you're able to find it. Alright, and once you've navigated to the right folder, you're just going to click Save. And so we've got the first save of our worksheet done. And that's going to end this part 1 of the video. In the next video, I will continue on page 2-9 and work through and show you how to insert the formulas in the worksheet. And so I will see you on the next video. Thank you.